Welcome to another episode of Responsible AI in Action. I'm your host, Charles Dimov, CMO of Comma.ai, the leader in responsible AI technology. For today's episode, I have Dr. Zainab Fatima. Dr. Fatima is a neurologist and an AI strategist working in the intersection of digital health, applied AI, and human cognition. If any one of those wasn't enough, she's a director in the big pharma industry. Zainab brings a unique perspective on how AI impacts not just systems and decisions, but the human mind itself. She studies how we think, how we learn, and ultimately trust modern AI technologies. Her work spans healthcare, omni-channel strategy, and the responsible adoption of AI in high-stakes environments. It is an absolute pleasure to have you join us, Dr. Fatima. So wonderful. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Charles, for having me. I just wanted to correct that I'm a neuroscientist, so I don't actually get into the brains of people, but, study the science behind the brain. And so I'm really excited to be here and chat with you all about AI.
That's wonderful. And if I remember correctly, when you and I were chatting, you were the PhD student, or rather your supervisor was a rather impressive individual. Could you tell us who that was?
Yeah, so Randy McIntosh, he was at the University of Toronto. He was the first
Yeah.
person who was looking into like large scale brain dynamics. And one of his really close collaborators was Jeff Hinton, who won the
Mhm.
Nobel Prize in Physics in 2024. And so I was sitting in those classrooms where AI was first conceptualized with the findings about the human brain and how we function and think as humans. And I think that intersection of human thought and then AI thinking is becoming more important these days, you know?
Yeah, that is definitely impressive, and wow, that's
Mhm.
just amazing. So wonderful. Good for you for having that opportunity, which is amazing. Good. So Zainab, why don't we jump right in here? In our early discussions, you'd have raised an important point around accountability. AI systems are taking on more cognitive tasks that humans used to do. It's
Mhm.
kind of similar to, in our discussion, we were talking about the calculator, how it does math way better than humans do in their heads, even manually on paper. A calculator is always going to beat me in terms of speed. As these cognitive tasks are outsourced to AI, how should organizations be rethinking what humans are actually responsible for? And on top of that, what should humans no longer be accountable for, frankly?
Yeah, I think that is the $1,000,000 question, right, Charles? Because as we conceptualized working in AI, we thought that we would give more and more accountability to humans. So AI would do the grunt work and then humans would do the checking. Now, the issue with that is AI does the grunt work really fast and really well to the
Mhm.
point where some of the computational abilities of AI far surpass human ability. And so how do we then become accountable for something where we don't have the cognitive ability to really check
Mhm.
information that's coming from AI? And so I think what people are starting to realize is we need a different system to do this. We can't just
Mhm.
have AI create and humans check because the
Mhm.
verification tax on humans to check what AI is doing far surpasses their cognitive ability. And so one proposal is potentially to get AI to really focus on some of the heavy calculations and have another AI come and check those calculations that's completely independently developed, where the humans
Mhm.
can start to work more on the agentic side of things, where they're
Mhm.
orchestrating different AI solutions to work with one another, because there, our flexibility and our ability to see the big picture in ways where an AI might miss that, I think that's where we can really thrive at this time.
Yeah, and that's an interesting concept that you bring up there, the cognitive tax. And
Hmm.
I think I saw this. It was a nice little cartoon just last week, in fact, by the Marketoonist, and he had basically a robot representing AI
Yeah.
with this huge dumpster of all kinds of tasks that it was just dumping on the human, saying,
Oh
"Hey,
my gosh.
human in the loop, go for it. Good luck, and let me know what I should be working on." So that's a great example of that cognitive task, or a cognitive tax, that is. So
Yeah,
interesting,
and
interesting.
I think the human the Harvard Business Review also put out an article about human like
Right.
brain fry and really getting into this ability where humans are taxed so much that we're not able to really manage that cognitive
Hmm.
fatigue. And
Hmm.
so there's two things that could happen as you start thinking about this cognitive fatigue, which is that we would reach our threshold fairly quickly because in evolutionary terms, it's not like our brains have become bigger. We still
Hmm.
have the same finite system in place, but
Hmm.
AI is able to learn exponentially because the more chips you add and the more software you put on it, it can expand its thinking fairly quickly. And so humans are going to need some way of figuring out what are their limits going to be. And we're not very good with that because we always think metacognitively that we can do so much more than we can.
Hmm.
And so we're going to need some help in understanding where is there a limit to human burnout when it comes to our cognition. And that limit can't be defined by us humans. It has to be set by AI almost, right? To say, this is what I think you're going to be able to do. This is your tasks for the day. And once you're done those tasks, you're kind of locked out because we'll need some intervention to come into place here because we can't manage that on our own. And if organizations think that they should put that burden on people, they're going to see very talented folks burning out very quickly. And so, this is a choice that we're going to have to make as we think about how do we bring AI into organizations where humans are accountable, right?
That's interesting. And do you see the burnout as just purely from the load because there's so much to do, or do you see the and would you see the burnout as, I mean, yeah, we all kind of know what burnout is, where you can't get out of bed in the morning, or you just say I can't go to work, or do you see it as simply that a giving up phase and saying, well, you know what, the AI kind of knows what it's doing. I'm just going to let it go, and I'm not going to pay that close attention to my work anymore, or not pay that close attention to the fact that I just keep clicking yes.
Yeah, I
Which one do you
mean,
think it more?
I
Yeah.
think that there is that concept of automation bias, and we've spoken about it
Mhm.
before as well, where what
Mhm.
happens is once you hit that threshold of making
Mhm.
decisions, then you're more likely to swing in the other direction and say, okay, well, AI knows better because, my math versus AI math, it can
Mhm.
do it. And so I'm just going to trust it. And that becomes quite problematic because you becoming
Mhm.
lax in high risk areas where human life is impacted at scale. And I'll give you an example. I have colleagues in pharma manufacturing where, you're
Yeah.
developing product and it's getting shipped worldwide for a particular drug. And if you have AI only doing that piece and humans kind of not, intervening at certain steps, this could be catastrophic when it comes to human life. So people that are developing agentic solutions in that area are very cautious of these limits of testing and making sure that they come to these things with a fresh mind. And, we've been doing this in other industries for a long time. So doctors
Mhm.
often start very early and they do a lot of their diagnoses early in the morning when they're fresh, and then after a certain point they're not
Ah, yeah.
allowed to diagnose patients and do the things, especially if you're in areas like pathology, right, where you're always looking in a microscope and trying to say, oh, is this benign or malignant, etc. And so I think putting this optimal cognitive window on when we're interacting and when we're verifying information from AI becomes critical, right?
What a fascinating perspective, and I did not know that about the doctors, but that is a great idea. You definitely don't want to have your doctor diagnose you after they've been up for, 28 hours or something
No.
on a rotation. My goodness, yes. Yes, you're right. Amazing. That is some
Hmm.
really interesting stuff that we gotta think about. Now,
Hmm.
let me lead on to the next question. So it's kind of associated with what we were just talking about. So,
Hmm.
as a cognitive neuroscientist, so what's your perspective on what's happening with the human brain as people increasingly rely on AI
Oh my
tools?
gosh,
So,
yeah.
and it's funny because one or two actually of the other conversations that I've had on this program, I was chatting with another professor in marketing actually, and he was kind of doing some research in AI, and he said, the important lesson is don't take your brain out of your head. In other words, don't just delegate all of your thinking power over to AI. So let me frame it as, do you see this as concerning in terms of
Hmm.
our own as humans, our memory, our judgment, our critical thinking over time? Is this a catastrophic scenario? Is this are we all going to be declining faster, or what are your thoughts in general?
Yeah. So I think there's two key things that I'll mention here. And one of them is actually
Yeah.
not related to AI, right? When people started using social media, they would go
Yes.
down this like almost, the doom scrolling situation where
Hmm.
you keep on scrolling and scrolling. And what people found in neuroscience research is your networks that are responsible for modulating your social media use
Okay.
are the
Mhm.
ones that you compensate with in aging. But those networks are being juiced out in your early 20s for people that are high social media users. So when it comes to the brain, having to shift its patterns and manage a lot of this digital like, onslaught of information, we have lots of things that we have to sort of fix when it comes to mental health and cognitive health. The way that our workday is settled. And I think AI can be really instrumental in that. It can help us navigate ways where it tells you, like I said, it locks you out after you've hit a certain amount of workload. It can tell you,
Mhm.
okay, you've done a lot of this like judgment and memory. Now you need to stop doing this and take a break, or do other
Mhm.
things, other tasks.
Mhm.
And it's almost like it's relieving in some ways, because you show up to your day and there's like a task list kind of made for you. So the
Mhm.
parts
Mhm.
that we don't like to do as people, like
Yeah.
scheduling our calendar invites or understanding, okay, what am I going to do today and how does it ladder up to my long term goals? Maybe AI does that, makes us feel good that we have somebody who's organizing our life. And it
Yes.
frees up some of the load for us to really work on critical thinking. And I think that's going to come from more social interactions, reading more, interacting more, and having the time in your day to pick up a book and actually read it, which I think a lot of us don't really have time to do. So I think it's going to look good if we do this the right
Yeah.
way.
I like this future that you're painting here. I absolutely love it, in fact. But and frankly, I have to say, it sounds like there's a market opportunity here for creating an AI that just watches us and says,
Mhm.
"Hey, Charles, time to go get, take a break. Go take 15 minutes, walk, get another coffee or tea or whatever it might be." Interesting. All right, that's cool. Now let's switch over to healthcare. So
Mhm.
today, AI can now pretty much match or even exceed human
Mhm.
diagnostic performance, right? And I remember you and I had chatted about this probably a week or two ago. Now, this used to be the exclusive domain of doctors and
Yes.
trained specialists who really kind of
Mhm.
knew the medical field and such. Now, yet, the interesting thing is, even though we're showing that, we can outperform human doctors, the adoption remains cautious. What's driving that tension between capabilities and trust?
I think a lot of it is an identity crisis, and it has little to do with AI, because
Yeah.
doctors, and I know with scientists, we train for decades to develop skills where we become very specialized in what we do.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
now, that entire skill can be distilled into a few minutes by an AI doing the same exact thing. And I went through this a little bit of this crisis where I spent a lot of my youth programming. I had to
Mhm.
learn how to do
Mhm.
supercomputing and
Mhm.
programming and really understand the brain dynamics through computation. And when I think about Claude Code and some of the other tools that are available to us, it seems like I spent all that time for naught, because
Mhm.
now you have a particular thing that can do it a lot faster. But I have to remind myself that the skills that I acquired during that time, if you remove the actual grunt work from it, it allowed
Mhm.
me to think and learn how to solve problems. And that's not going away.
Mhm.
So I think
Mhm.
for doctors, one of the things that will start to happen, and we'll see this happening fairly quickly, is that in pharma and drug companies are going to start to come up with ways of helping health really fast, right? So we're going to be having drugs that solve a lot of our medical problems quickly. And we can do
Yes.
that with AI. And
Yeah.
then we'll have patients that are getting super educated using all kinds of AI tools about
Mm.
their
Mhm.
symptomatology and
Mhm.
how they are. And I think because drug companies want to sell to patients and really
Mhm.
make sure that their treatment is impacting a person's quality of life, the doctor's going to have to come on board. So the way that this identity crisis will be managed is more going to be you're being pushed from both directions. And
Mhm.
then one way that doctors could really think of themselves is, okay, I know how to recognize certain signs in patients physically. Like, all those nonverbal cues that we talk about that AI might not really get there
Right.
with
Right.
right now, they will be very quick at doing patient profiling and things like that, verifying some of the things that AI comes up with, and then prescribing those drugs. And then going to see, are there any adverse events? Are there things that I should watch out for with these patients? And so they're going to be these middlemen. And instead of being like leading the
Mm.
charge, so to speak, and it'll require a lot of the younger generation of doctors who've grown up with technology and has really embraced AI to bring everybody on board. And I think it's more of that identity crisis than anything else. Than more, and that adoption, I think, is just about rethinking your place in providing care to patients, right? And
That's
I think
interesting.
Yeah, and I think that a lot of that's gonna have to come from behavioral science. So doctors are gonna have to attend almost like therapy for AI, to understand, hey, this is my spot here. This is what I can do to help manage my patients better. And it's gonna be a little bit of a steep climb, but I think we'll get there pretty quickly.
Interesting. So a bit of a change in workflow and how things are done from that side, from the medical side. Now, if you had to take a guess, are we talking about 5 years, 10 years, 20 years? What do you think?
Less than 5, I would say.
Less than 5. Okay. All right. That's optimistic. I like that.
Yeah,
That's wonderful. We'll
yeah.
we'll keep it.
Mhm.
Let's hope that that's exactly what it takes. So that's awesome.
Mhm,
Good. So my last question for you. So
mhm,
far, we've been discussing a lot about a number of different concepts on concerning topics. Let's leave on a more positive note as well. Although I do like the 5 year idea. So in 5 years, I'm going to have
mhm.
way better medical, care. So in our discussion, you've suggested that AI should be focused on computation, memory, maybe scale challenges, things like that. Meanwhile, humans maybe should focus on more of the creative side, some strategy, the non-standard challenges that really require out of the box thinking every once in a while. Right? So,
Mhm,
how should organizations practically design the division of labor to be able to kind of say, hey, maybe the blend of both worlds is the ideal situation. How do we divide that?
mhm. Yeah, so I'm sure everyone's been tuned in to Artemis 2's flyby of the moon, right? Like, it's so
Mhm.
exciting. We've
It is.
never traveled this distance before. We're at the cusp of like deep exploration of space and incredible advances in science in the age of AI. So I think, humans conceptualized all this. Like, we sent a Voyager out there 100 years ago. It's still going,
Mhm,
right? So our
mhm, mhm.
imagination really knows no bounds, okay, with or without AI. And
Yes, yes.
now those things don't need to stop really, because if you thought of something that was truly blue sky, now you can actually soar literally and figuratively in
Mhm,
the blue sky. And so I
mhm,
think we can go on this path where there are no limits to human creativity, imagination, and what we want to do. But where we need to bring a little bit of caution is in areas that really impact our livelihood, right? So areas like fintech, cybersecurity sectors,
mm, mhm,
places where we feel safe lives. So I think in those areas we need to tread a little bit carefully, because AI tools can really dramatically put that whole system at risk. So I think those areas are a little bit difficult. But when it comes to other things, I
mhm,
think that it's very exciting. Like, all the things that held us back because of our motor system and our ability to physically do work will no longer be the things that hold us back. And so I think exciting times. And for organizations, I think people have
mhm,
really come a long way in the past couple of years when it comes
mhm,
to AI
mhm.
adoption. I think
Yeah,
everyone's really excited about a lot of these things. There is a bit of nervousness, but the optimism far exceeds that, a desire to really use this for excellence, I think. And so it'll be exciting times in the future.
that sounds like an excellent way to kind of close off on the questions at the very least. And definitely my perspective is, you know what, as much AI in the medical area as possible, that if that is what helps us progress our field, then that is wonderful because that's good for all of us. So
For
that's
sure.
wonderful. Dr. Zainab, thank you so much for joining us and for the fascinating discussion about the human side of AI adoption, your perspectives on cognitive load, on the accountability, on how AI is reshaping the way we think, the way we learn, the way we make
Mhm.
decisions. All of that is pretty important and yet seldom discussed because I really don't hear a lot of conversation about this just yet. So it's a great lens on the organization and how we should be thinking of deploying AI systems today, I think. So Dr. Zainab Fatima is a neuroscientist and an AI strategist and currently works in big pharma, where she works at the intersection of digital health, applied AI, and cognitive or human cognition, that is. And that pretty much wraps up the this episode of Responsible AI in Action. In each conversation, we speak with the leaders across the AI industry and those working on enterprise transformation to explore what actually works. We look at what's working, what's not working, and how to deploy AI responsibly in the real world. Thank you to all those who are watching. We look forward to seeing you on the next episode of Responsible AI in Action.